The moment the first report surfaced that Venezuela had fired the opening shot, the world froze. Because this was not a distant skirmish or a border misunderstanding. It was a direct challenge to the most powerful naval force on Earth. Tensions that had been building quietly suddenly erupted into a crisis that tested technology, doctrine, discipline, and raw power. In a matter of minutes, what began as a bold provocation turned into a brutal demonstration of modern naval dominance, leaving analysts stunned and governments scrambling to understand how the balance of power could tilt so violently, so quickly, and so decisively. From the outside, the situation appeared simple: warships maneuvering across blue water, radar systems sweeping the horizon, and missile batteries locked and ready. But the exterior reality hid a deeper story of preparation, engineering, and strategic intent. The vessels involved were not just floating platforms. They were moving fortresses shaped by decades of combat lessons. Stealth contours, layered armor, advanced radar-absorbing materials, and sensor masts rising like digital sentinels define the outward appearance. Every angle, every surface, every antenna existed for a reason. While Venezuelan assets relied heavily on visible missile launchers and conventional radar signatures, the opposing fleet presented a quieter, deadlier silhouette, one designed not to intimidate by size alone, but to disappear, detect, and strike before the enemy fully understood what was happening. Inside those steel hulls, the interior told a far more complex story, one that explained why the confrontation ended so fast. Deep within the command centers, rows of screens fused data from satellites, drones, sonar arrays, and electronic intelligence into a single living picture of the battlefield. Operators did not see chaos. They saw clarity. Every hostile movement was tracked, categorized, and prioritized within seconds. Climate-controlled combat information centers hummed with disciplined urgency, not panic. Redundant power systems ensured that even if one section were hit, the rest would continue to function flawlessly. Crew members moved through narrow corridors trained to operate in darkness, smoke, or damage, their routines drilled thousands of times before this moment ever arrived. This interior advantage, invisible to cameras and headlines, proved more decisive than any missile or gun. Performance under pressure defined the outcome. When Venezuelan forces initiated their action, response time became the true weapon. Detection to decision cycles measured in seconds allowed immediate countermeasures to activate. Interceptors launched almost automatically, guided by predictive algorithms that calculated trajectories faster than human reaction could ever allow. Engines pushed vessels into optimal positions, while electronic warfare systems flooded the spectrum, blinding and confusing hostile guidance systems. What might have taken hours or days in previous generations of warfare concluded in minutes, not because of recklessness, but because performance had been engineered for overwhelming speed, accuracy, and coordination. Safety features played a silent, but critical role throughout the encounter. These warships were designed not just to fight, but to survive. Compartmentalization prevented cascading damage. Automated fire suppression systems stood ready to seal and extinguish any breach. Shock-absorbing mounts protected sensitive electronics from nearby explosions. Even the crew's protective gear reflected modern safety philosophy, integrating communication, situational awareness, and life support systems into a single wearable platform. While the offensive display captured headlines, it was these safety systems that ensured the force could act aggressively without unacceptable risk to personnel or mission continuity. The unique selling points of this naval dominance lay in integration. It was not one ship, one missile, or one commander that ended the fight, but a network. Surface vessels, submarines, aircraft, and space-based assets functioned as one organism. Data flowed seamlessly, decisions cascaded downward instantly, and execution occurred without hesitation. This level of integration transformed individual platforms into force multipliers, making any isolated attack effectively meaningless. By contrast, fragmented command structures and limited interoperability left the opposing side reacting instead of controlling the engagement. Cost and price, often overlooked in dramatic narratives, added another layer of understanding. The financial investment behind such capability runs into billions, not just in hardware, but in training, maintenance, and research. Each vessel represents decades of development and continuous upgrades. Critics argue about expense, but moments like this confrontation reveal the return on that investment. The ability to end a conflict in minutes, preventing escalation, casualties, and prolonged instability, reframes cost as deterrence rather than extravagance. For the opposing force, the price was paid not in currency alone, but in lost credibility and strategic leverage. As the dust settled, the conclusion became unavoidable. This was not a war in the traditional sense. It was a lesson. A lesson in how modern conflicts are decided before they fully begin. A lesson in the power of preparation over provocation. And a lesson in how quickly miscalculation can collapse under the weight of superior technology and coordination. The encounter will be studied in military academies and political circles for years, not for its duration, but for its clarity. It showed that in today's world, the fight is often over before the first headlines finish loading, and that dominance is measured not by how loudly one fires, but by how decisively one controls the outcome. The world watched as headlines faded, but the message remained etched into global strategy. Modern naval warfare is no longer about drawn-out battles. It is about minutes that reshape history. Venezuela's decision to fire first became a case study in the dangers of underestimating integrated power. The response demonstrated that when preparation, technology, and doctrine align, conflicts do not escalate, they collapse. And in that collapse, a new reality of deterrence was once again written across the world's oceans.